What's good, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about building muscle. I've been training since 2019 and since then I have made many mistakes throughout my muscle building journey. I've also stumbled across a few successes, but this video is going to compile a few of the key principles that I have learned that helps me build muscle and is going to help me continue to build muscle throughout my life. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to learn how to really not waste the time with the information you're getting when it comes to building muscle, watch the rest of this video because I've got this for you. Okay, so the first principle that I've learned is don't just move the weight for the sake of it. So I know a lot of us think the idea of progressive overload, that's how we get stronger, and it is, but what we end up forgetting and what I've ended up forgetting in so many numerous occasions is I try to increase the weight or you'll try to increase the weight and you're doing it in a way which isn't really conducive to muscle growth. So let me explain. You try to progressively overload, and whilst that's great, you end up forgetting the key principle when it comes to building muscle and bodybuilding, which is mind-muscle connection. You end up trying to increase the weight, so your form fucks up, your tempo's all messed up, and you're not feeling each individual muscle fiber whenever you're doing it. Progressive overload is naturally something that we need to aim for when it comes to building muscle. But if you are, like I say, just trying to move the weight for the sake of it, what's going to happen is you're actually going to train your nervous system and your body to be lifting the weight in a way that shouldn't be. There's a very specific type of way you need to be lifting the weight when it comes to bodybuilding and building muscle. You need to really get inside the muscle you're lifting. And if you're just trying to move the weight, what you're doing is you're just training a movement pattern. And whilst, yes, that will help with building muscle, it's not going to be the best way possible. So we really need to mentally think about this and really kind of comprehend and really get into the understanding of mind-muscle connection is so important, and you shouldn't just move the weight for the sake of it, because if you're going to just be moving the weight for the sake of moving the weight, you're going to be cheating yourself, because you're not going to be using the muscle in its full contractile range, you're not going to be flexing properly, you're not going to be extending properly, and then as a result of that, you're going to be missing out on a lot of stimulus on your target muscle, meaning you're leaving gains on the table. And you don't want that, because we want to make every single session that we're doing the most efficient as it possibly can be, and we want to get the most amount of muscle gain on the table when it comes to each one of our sessions, so that across a long period of time we can build a shitload of muscle. So be really cautious when going up on weights. Like if you, for example, you're doing 6 to 10 on something, let's say a shoulder press, and you get to the point where you've reached 10 reps for that weight, I would say don't go up just yet. Improve your form, because improving form is going to be a way of progressively loading. If you increase the weight and then you're kind of a bit shaken and you're not as stable, you're not actually helping yourself, and you're not going to be targeting the muscle that you want. Okay, so the next key principle we have is do more warm-ups. So at the moment, you go into the gym, maybe you'll fuck around with the red band and whatnot, and then maybe you'll do one warm-up set before your working sets. This is leaving gains on the table, and I'm going to tell you why. When you're not effectively warm before your sessions, your joints and your blood flow and your fascia, it's going to be tight. And when it's tight, your range of motion isn't going to be as good as it possibly could be. And if your range of motion isn't as good as it possibly could be, you're not going to be taking your muscle through its full contractile range, meaning you're not getting the most out of all the movements you're doing. So when I say do more warm-ups, I don't just mean, do more warm-up sets, but I also mean do a warm-up at the start of the session. So instead of just fucking around with the band and then just doing some shoulder dislocations that you do, actually go and do some cardio. Obviously not a full-on session, but 5 to 10 minutes of cardio before your session, so you can feel warmed up. The whole point of a warm-up is so all your joints feel loose. If you feel any kind of stiffness in your body, it means you haven't warmed up enough. And then following on from that, it's really important that we do warm-up sets. So at the moment, you'll maybe do one set and then you go into your working weight, right? That's a real big problem, because if you're not doing enough warm-up sets for prior to your working sets, let's say at a given exercise, what's going to happen is you're not really getting enough blood in the muscle before your working sets, meaning you're going to leave gains on the table. The reason for this is because when you don't do enough warm-up sets, you're not able to get enough of a good pump. Okay, the warm-up sets serve as a purpose of kind of greasing the groove for the exercise you're about to do. So if you do 2 to 3 warm-up sets, let's say before your working sets, what's going to happen is you'll get a really good pump. You'll be able to feel all the muscle fibers in the muscle you're trying to train, and then as a result of that, when you go into more heavy weights and into your working weights, it means not only are you actually going to be stronger, but you're going to have better mind-muscle connection. There's going to be less risk of injury, and you're going to have more stimulus to your target muscle, meaning you can more effectively stimulate muscle growth for that muscle, meaning building muscle is going to come easier to you. I know that obviously we want to get our workouts over and done with, but if you want to get the most amount of gains possible, I'd really advise you to focus on doing a warm-up sets, because if you do that, then you're going to notice a lot more gains. So the next key principle I've learned is about intensity and technique. So more often than not, you're not training as hard as you know you could be, and you let your technique suffer. So what training intensity basically is getting close to failure. You know that point where you're trying to lift the weight and you're really starting to struggle? The best way to kind of know whether or not you're getting close to failure is you're trying to move the weight and it's moving really, really slowly. That's intensity. But we also need to pair this with really good lifting technique, because what happens with you, either you have really good technique, but then you're not training hard enough, or you're training hard and then your technique will kind of slack. The idea is you need to maintain both of them. So you need to be cognizant and conscious of how you're lifting your weight, because if you're conscious of what you're doing, you're more likely to have a good mind-muscle connection, and as a result of that, it will make it easier for you to feel the muscle and then obviously target it appropriately. And then with that in mind, also pairing the intensity with it, meaning we can really stimulate the muscle we're trying to target. Because if we don't have both of these together, we're going to be leaving gains on the table. We're not going to be getting the most amount of muscle growth we could possibly get. And then as a result of it, we'll end up wasting our time and be more likely to spin our wheels. So it's really important you combine these together, train close to failure, but also make sure like your lifting tempo and your mind-muscle connection is on point. You really want to be out here feeling your muscle and kind of getting it working whilst training hard. Okay, so the key principle number 4 is choose exercises that feel good to you, not just what people on social media say is best. So if you spend a lot of time looking at fitness content, like surely you probably do, right? You'll notice that on social media, it's just like religion. People are just arguing over what's right. You know, they talk about all the science and shit. The science is really important, but you can over science yourself and overcomplicate it to the point where your exercise selection is stuff that you don't really like. So when I say this, you obviously need to be somewhat discerning. You should have a good exercise selection that trains your muscles through all their anatomical functions, that trains them in the stretch position, which loads them in the correct way. But you really want to make sure you're picking exercises that you actually like. Because if you're not picking exercises that you like, it's going to make it harder to stick to them long term. You're more likely to skip out on them. And it's important we make bodybuilding fun, because if you're not enjoying it, then you're not going to stick to it long term. It's plain and simple. And it's not worth stressing over the most optimal way to, you know, target your muscle in the stretch position, or at what point should you, you know, stop going up on a lat pull down. Learn form correctly, but don't overcomplicate it. So with this in mind, don't overcomplicate the exercises you're doing. If there's a certain exercise that you like, but it's not quote unquote optimal, still do the exercise, because we want to make it fun and we want to make it enjoyable. And the last key principle is focus on getting a really good stretch. So I found that the most definitive and effective way for me to be able to build muscle is through loading my muscle in a stretch position. I find that whenever I take a full range of motion and I really feel the stretch of the muscle to the point where it feels quite uncomfortable, I get more muscle from it. And the reason for this is because this creates more mechanical tension, because your muscles are stronger in their stretch position, meaning they can tolerate more load. And because they're stretched, there's more tension on each of the muscle fibers. So whenever you're lifting, obviously this feeds back into proper technique. Really ensure that you are getting a really good stretch. So obviously if you're doing a pec fly, don't just stop there, go all the way back here. If you're doing a shoulder press, really go down to get a good stretch on your delts. If you're doing a bicep curl, really make sure you get behind your body to let your biceps stretch. Focusing on the stretch is what's going to help you build more muscle. Don't just always do everything in its contractile range, because if you do that, you are going to be leaving gains on the table. You want it to almost feel quite uncomfortable for your muscles. Obviously, not go too far, but the more uncomfortable you can make it within your workouts, I'd say typically the better it's going to be. And this is purely anecdotal. Obviously, there's some scientific basis on it, but for the most part, I found that what's worked for me is really loading it when it's stretched. Because when you load your muscles when it's stretched, it's just going to stimulate more muscle growth and it's going to feel better. So, I hope you found this video helpful. Comment in the comment section below if you've got any questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.